The vampire of modern popular culture is an elegant aristocrat in a black cape, inhabiting a Gothic castle, sipping wine from crystal glasses, and seducing his victims with practiced refinement. This image, born from Bram Stoker's imagination and polished by a century of Hollywood, bears almost no resemblance to the genuinely terrifying beliefs that persisted for centuries across Eastern Europe. Here, among the dense forests of the Carpathians, the rolling hills of the Balkans, and the fog-covered Slavic plains, the vampire, the Yupper, the Vrikalakas, the Strigoi, was no romantic hero. It was a bloated, putrid corpse that had risen from the grave to bring death, disease, and madness to the neighbors and blood relatives it had left behind. This is the real story. Before it became an international term, the word vampire traveled a long road through East and South Slavic languages. Most linguists agree the root is native Slavic. The oldest documented form, Yupper, appears in an 11th century Old Russian manuscript, a marginal note in the Book of Prophets that mentions a certain Pop Yupperlikii. The word likely meant either one who sucks or one who bites. In the South Slavic languages it became vampire, while the parallel concept of the Vukadlak, the werewolf, often blurred with it. Balkan folklore held that a werewolf inevitably became a vampire after death. In Romanian mythology, the equivalent figure is the strigoi, derived from the Latin strix, a vampire owl, a night bird that fed on flesh. Strigoi could be either living sorcerers or the risen dead. For the Eastern European peasant, the vampire was never an abstraction. It was the specific neighbor who had died last week and had not found rest. If you had asked an 18th century Serbian or Romanian peasant to describe a vampire, his answer would have horrified any fan of Interview with the Vampire. The folkloric vampire was bloated and swollen, engorged with blood, its skin not pale but dark red or livid blue, as though on the verge of bursting. Its hair and nails had continued to grow after burial. It wore an ordinary shroud or burial clothes, stained with earth and blood. Its mouth was often open, lips bitten raw, fresh blood seeping from the mouth and nose. Crucially, it had no neat pair of fangs. It was believed to gnaw its own shroud and flesh inside the grave from hunger. When it finally emerged, it bit its victims with all its teeth, or with a sharp stinger said to hide beneath the tongue. The vampire's return to the world of the living followed a distinct sequence. First came disturbances at the house of the deceased. Footsteps, knocking on the roof, broken crockery, livestock found strangled in the barn, food gone bad. Then came visits to the family. The vampire would come to its wife or husband and call them by name. Anyone who answered or opened the door would soon fall ill and waste away within days. In Serbian and Bulgarian belief, the vampire frequently returned to its living spouse to fulfill conjugal obligations. The children born of such unions, the dampirs, were said to possess the unique ability to see vampires and destroy them. A natural death in deep old age after a righteous life offered some protection. But the world was full of dangers, and almost anyone could become a candidate. Among the risk factors present at birth, children born in a caul, born with teeth, with an extra nipple, or with a tail. Seventh sons of seventh sons were especially vulnerable. Those who practiced black magic were considered automatic candidates for vampirism after death. The same applied to those who died unconfessed, to suicides, and to anyone cursed by their parents. Equally dangerous was an improperly conducted burial. If a cat, dog, or bird passed over the body or coffin before interment, the dead man was doomed. The same applied if a living person's shadow fell on the corpse, if the body was carried to the grave by the wrong road, if the eyes were left unbound, or if the person had died a violent death and their blood had spilled on the ground. A soul that demanded vengeance would return to its body. The most remarkable aspect of Eastern European vampirism is that it did not remain a local superstition. In the age of the Enlightenment, reports of the living dead flooded into Western Europe, causing genuine alarm in the scientific and government circles of the Habsburg Empire. When the Habsburgs recaptured northern Serbia and Altenia from the Ottomans, their officials encountered a phenomenon that bewildered them. Peasants were systematically digging up graves and driving stakes through corpses. Military physicians and judicial officers were dispatched to investigate. Their official reports ignited what historians have called the European vampire craze. The case of Petar Blagojevich, 1725, Serbia. Petar Blagojevich, a peasant from the village of Kiseljevo, died and was buried. Within 9 days, 9 people in the village were dead. Each, before dying, had reported that Blagojevich visited them in the night and throttled them. His widow stated that he had come to her and demanded his boots. An Austrian official and a local priest were present at the exhumation. The report noted that the body was entirely intact, hair, beard, and nails had grown, fresh blood was visible at the mouth. The heart was pierced with a stake and the body burned. The case of Arnold Paole, 1726–1732, Serbia. Arnold Paole was a soldier who claimed he had been bitten by a vampire in Greece but had cured himself by eating earth from the creature's grave. He later died falling from a hay wagon. Within a month, villagers reported being visited by him. 4 people died. His grave was opened, the body found in the characteristic vampiric condition, and it was staked, reportedly producing a loud groan, and burned. Several years later a new wave of deaths swept the village. A medical commission led by military physician Johann Fluckinger was dispatched in 1731. It determined that Paole had bitten livestock during his nocturnal activity, and the peasants who ate that meat had become infected. The commission exhumed dozens of bodies and produced a detailed medical report, Visum et Repertum, meaning seen and reported, which became a sensation in Vienna, Paris, and London. Defense against vampires in Eastern Europe was a layered system encompassing prevention, passive protection, and radical intervention at the grave. Garlic and onions were considered natural apotropaics. They were rubbed on doors, window frames, the udders of cows, and the necks of children. Iron objects, having passed through fire, were laid beneath thresholds. Perhaps the strangest weapon was the poppy seed. Vampires were believed to suffer from a compulsion to count. Scatter poppy seeds on the road between the cemetery and the village, and the vampire would be unable to move forward until it had counted every single seed. Dawn usually found it still counting. To locate a vampire in the graveyard, a virgin youth rode a young stallion, entirely black or entirely white, one that had never stumbled, between the graves. Over the burial place of a vampire, the horse would balk, refuse to move, and begin to tremble. Once found, the ritual of destruction followed a precise sequence. The grave was opened and the body examined. A stake of hawthorn, blackthorn, or aspen was driven through the heart. The head was severed and placed at the feet or turned face down. The remains were burned completely and the ashes scattered over running water. Simply reburying the body solved nothing. Vlad III, known as Tepes, the Impaler, and as Dracula, son of the dragon. The 15th century ruler of Wallachia was not a vampire. He was a ruthless ruler fighting on 2 fronts simultaneously, against the Ottoman Empire and against treacherous boyars within his own borders. Impalement was a political instrument of terror. In Romanian history he was long regarded as a national hero who defended Christian lands. The myth was born from 15th-century German pamphlets commissioned by his political rival Matthias Corvinus, which portrayed him as a sadist who dined among rotting corpses and dipped his bread in the blood of the executed. 400 years later, Bram Stoker found these chronicles in a library and borrowed the resonant name for his novel, relocating the action from Wallachia to Transylvania. Countess Elizabeth Báthory, the Blood Countess. The myth, to preserve her eternal youth, she allegedly bathed in tubs filled with the blood of virgin girls. The historical reality, her trial in 1611 documented the torture and murder of hundreds of young women. However, not a single mention of blood bathing appears anywhere in the trial record. That detail was introduced by a Jesuit historian a century later. Modern historians remain divided. Was Báthory genuinely a sadistic serial killer, or was she the victim of a Habsburg political conspiracy, a powerful widow whose family was owed enormous debts by the crown, and whose vast estates stood to be confiscated upon her conviction? Many of the signs of vampirism recorded by Austrian physicians are natural stages of decomposition under specific conditions. The body bloats from gases produced by bacterial decay. That same pressure forces blood and fluid from the lungs up into the mouth and nose. The apparent growth of hair and nails is an illusion. As the skin dehydrates and contracts after death, it pulls back from the roots, making them appear to have lengthened. The groan heard when a stake was driven through the chest was produced by residual air being forced through the vocal cords as the bloated torso was punctured, the same mechanism as a bellows. When plague, cholera, or tuberculosis swept through a village, people had no concept of bacteria or contagion. If one man died first and his family followed, the conclusion was logical within their framework: he was coming back at night and pulling the living after him. Two diseases added further credibility. Porphyria causes the skin to blister in sunlight, the gums to recede until the teeth resemble fangs, and extreme sensitivity to light. Rabies, transmitted through bites, produces hydrophobia, spasms triggered by strong smells including garlic, aggression, and the compulsion to bite. The Eastern European vampire underwent a remarkable evolution. Born as an unconscious fear of death, disease, and the unknown, the figure transformed from a filthy Slavic revenant into a refined Gothic count. Strip away the Hollywood veneer and what remains is a unique stratum of Balkan and Slavic culture, dark, mysterious, and extraordinarily atmospheric. The vampire legends of Eastern Europe remind us of a time when the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead was as thin as the mist over the Carpathian Mountains, and a simple wooden stake was the only weapon a person had against the nightmare beyond the door.